Good evening and welcome to Province-Wide. I'm Diane Verneil. The housing market across Ontario continues to be brisk. So far this year, the number of houses sold is close to last year's figures, almost 195,000 sales. But the average price of a house in Ontario continues to climb. It's at just over $279,000. So when you are spending so much money, it is shocking to hear that the average home buyer spends about half an hour in a house before making the big decision. And in this market, many buyers are skipping the inspection, afraid that they'll lose the sale. That's a big mistake, says one expert. He gave us an inside look at problems that could cost you big bucks. He started out as a carpenter.
Now, one of the things is that this front porch is completely enclosed right down to ground with no ventilation underneath it, and there should be ventilation underneath that so the wood doesn't rot.
But these days, Bob Johnston is in high demand as a registered home inspector. He's checking out this older house in Baden, just west of Kitchener. Potential home buyers make up the bulk of his clients.
I'm looking for the major issues that the client may not have seen, that may not be readily understandable or visible to a purchaser, and how that issue impacts my client's purchase and how it's going to impact how they live in the house.
Bob is like a detective, looking for clues that tell him how sound a house is or isn't.
Well, every house has a story, and my job is to interpret what that story is and explain it to my client.
One of his thorough 3-hour inspections usually starts in the basement, where Bob says you can see the bones of the house. These hand-cut beams immediately get his attention. His theory:
this was taken from an older building that was probably demolished, perhaps a barn.
How do you know that?
Well, in this area of Ontario, we have a lot of Mennonites, and they never throw anything of use away. What this was probably in a barn, and there were other structures being mortised into this, and that's why we've got those notches.
The basement yields some more interesting clues, like the water pipes.
They're copper, they're good, but they need to be properly supported.
They're a little droopy, aren't they?
Yeah, at one time they were. They're the brackets that held them.
Yeah.
But there's been some work done. Those are new valves, so obviously some new piping was put in, and nobody remembered to refasten the pipes.
Bob spots something that convinces him the plumbing was done by an amateur. Notice the price stickers?
A licensed plumber contractor would be buying these valves at wholesale prices, and there wouldn't be price stickers on them. So the homeowner or some other weekend warrior went and bought these and put them in himself.
But the electrical panel with 100 amp service and looking brand new impresses him, except its location.
Because of this shelf, there's not enough safe access to the panel for an electrician to work on the panel safely. So this needs to be moved.
This is too close.
It's too close.
We venture to the other side of the basement where there's a mid-efficiency furnace. Bob likes that.
The data plate tells me the age of the furnace, which is 2002 is when it was manufactured. It tells me what its output capacity is and how hot the furnace should get.
On the main floor now, Bob checks out the sink.
The plumbing down below is newer ABS plastic. They also have a water treatment system that looks like a reverse osmosis.
But he spots something he doesn't like.
It's an improper S-trap, which could mean that we get siphoning occurring and sewer gas coming back in, so that should be corrected.
Another concern, the wiring. Many older homes don't have proper grounding, so he's checking that.
The two yellow lights tell us that it's fully grounded. This black button trips off the power, so this is functioning the way it's designed to.
Bob, as we're leaving the kitchen and entering the living room, I noticed that there's a step down and then a step back up again. Is this a design feature, or is this telling you something else about the house?
No, it's not an intentional design feature because it could be a bit of a trip hazard until you got used to it. What it's telling me, and based on other old homes that I've inspected, is that this section behind us was probably an entry porch.
Using a laser light, he spots another problem. This one's on the ceiling.
It's a water stain, and the probable cause is roof shingle damage. Ice damming, possibly due to the fact that this is a cathedral ceiling with probably not adequate ventilation.
Cathedral ceilings are nice, Bob says, but notoriously difficult to ventilate. That causes ice damage on the roof that sometimes leaks through.
Now, I'm always looking for safety issues in a house, and it's good to see we've got a handrail running down the stairs.
Bob takes us up to a second-floor bedroom where he can access the attic. Our camera doesn't fit through the tiny opening, and Bob barely squeezes through himself. What he spots?
The house structure is a wood frame structure. There's a lot of disturbed insulation and not much of it, so I would be advising additional insulation be installed.
In the middle of the floor, there's a metal grate, which seems like a strange spot for an air vent. Bob says it's evidence of an old stove.
So there would have been a pipe here from a wood stove.
Yeah.
On our way outside, our house detective spots another clue that may tell us the age of the house.
Yep, 1947 aerial shot of Baden, and it just turns out that the house that we're in is right there.
So that tells you this house was at least here in 1947.
At least here in 1947, but you can see that there was an open porch on the side of the house that I talked about earlier.
Looking at the side of the house, Bob is impressed by the siding job and new windows.
So when these windows were installed, they flashed all the outside trim with aluminum and caulked it. But again, the windows are better quality windows. You can either get cheap or you can get good. These are good.
But from the ground, Bob spots evidence of trouble, debris poking up from the eaves. On closer inspection, we find that all the eaves are jammed.
It increases the risk of ice damming on the shingles, so damage to the shingles. It also creates a flow of water right down next to the foundation instead of coming out the downpipe.
On the other side of the house, Bob climbs up to the roof for a closer look, and it's not good news.
So I see some rust on the chimney pipe, but nothing serious. So we have this downspout here that's discharging water from the upper roof onto this lower roof. During the fall and winter and spring, it's going to freeze and thaw here, and you can see where there is some damage to the shingles.
So what happens when he delivers his report to the home buyer?
Have you seen people decide not to buy a house based on what you've told them?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Houses will commit suicide in my presence.
And you've got to wonder what real estate agents think of him.
Do real estate people like you or not like you?
Both. My experience after 14 years in business is that the really thoroughly professional realtor who's focused on the client's needs likes me. They want me to be thorough without being nitpicky. The real estate person who is more focused on their commission check and the deal going through without any impediment obviously doesn't like me.
So while some houses are an open book, others try to shroud their secrets. But this home sleuth is reading between the lines, uncovering each story. Now, there was a lot more that Bob did on that inspection. We only showed you the highlights. He charges $425 for a 3-hour overview. His final advice, if you are going to get an inspection, make sure the person doing it is registered. And you can read more about finding a home inspector by going to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation website at www.cmhc.ca.